H really is out here doing the Lord's work. Listen, when you're out there, pants down, schlong in hand.
Okay.
Sir, I'm trying to have a conversation, please. Sir, stay out of my business. This is what happens when you get in my business. America.
Yeah, well, he'll kill you. Watch out. I told you. What did I just say?
You don't know me. You don't know me like that. You don't know what I know. Welcome to my brain. All are welcome. All are welcome.
Hey, little chonks. Welcome back to another filthy little chonky stream. We are going to be doing what we did last Wednesday, where I talk about the recent review I did last week. And if you don't know, I have a weekly review on YouTube amongst streaming and posting some other videos. I do a weekly review because I'm very passionate about storytelling, specifically visual storytelling. So usually movies, but I also do TV shows. Sorry, I'm filling out paperwork. TV shows and other various mediums. But yes, for my Wednesday streams, I think I'm going to be, for the most part, switching over to doing because I usually release reviews on Tuesdays, and then I think having Wednesday to go in full, more in-depth review is, I think, what I... Because for my reviews, I have to cut out like 80% of it, because I've tried to hit that, and I don't want my review videos to be longer than 10 minutes, so I end up cutting out tons of stuff. I usually just keep in more of like some of the better points, but mostly I mostly keep in some of the jokes. So I figured I like to do more where I like to go in depth about some of the stuff I missed. And so if you don't know, I released a video yesterday about the first part of the Arcane second season. The first part of 3 of Arcane season 2. Here, hold on a second. All right. But yeah, so I released that, the first part, and if you haven't seen it, obviously talking about that, there's spoiler warning, so if you haven't seen the first part of the Arcane season 2 that came out this weekend, spoiler warning. We're going to talk about it. We're going to go in depth. We're going to go in detail about it and how it was just okay, and that's being pretty generous. Hold on, let me move my paperwork over. I finished my paperwork and then didn't move it over. As being pretty generous, it's really just the drop in quality was very, not just noticeable, it was very disappointing. Sorry, let me move this. Let me move this. And there we go. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to have a nice little discussion about it. And yeah, good. Everything seems to be up and running. YouTube, what are you doing? What are you doing, YouTube? YouTube's always got the problems, doesn't it? Doesn't it? But yes, we'll be going through. So let me flip over. This up. It's nice to actually talk about it, because the next couple reviews will obviously be movies in theaters, and so I won't have like the actual medium to go through, so it's kind of nice having these ones where I do have that. I believe it's this one. Let's see. There we go. So yeah, we're going to be talking about Arcane Season 2. Like I said, if you haven't seen it, now is your time to fly away if you want to watch it spoiler-free. But if you haven't seen my video, I pretty much go into it anyways. but at least in the second half. The first half I always try to my videos. I try to give a review that doesn't spoil anything, and then I tell you when I'm going to spoil stuff, so you can always get an opinion on it, and then you can move on. But yeah, we're going to talk about it. A very controversial subject. Not very controversial. There's certain, properties or franchises that people are very passionate about. And so anytime you give any sort of critique on it, whether valid or not, people are going to get upset. And I figured Arcane, obviously being an extension of League of Legends and its wider, online multimedia, their music videos, all their shows or whatever stuff, I knew people were just going to be upset right off the bat, which they were. And people left a lot of comments. Not a lot, just a few. Most of them were just emotional responses. I don't like what you said, and not really giving any rebuttals. There was one person who wrote like a freaking paper, and I don't know why. In my dumb head, I was like, "Whoa, this person took the time to write all this. They must have like maybe some valid criticism. Maybe they found where they pointed out the names in the thing because I just missed it." And I was like, I was actually kind of hoping for that, but I don't believe they said the names of those characters ever in the show. But no, it was just most of it again was just an emotional response to them obviously being fans of the original Arcane series like I was. And just being upset that I would dare to critique, regardless if it was valid or not. But we're gonna go through it because, like I said, I cut out a whole bunch of stuff. And actually, it was funny. Some of the stuff that I cut out bled over. There's a part in the thing where I put a little correction, where I call Hyperdinger, and the reason I called him Hyperdinger is because I had a joke in it where I made fun of how he acts so hyperactive. I ended up cutting that part, but in my stupidness when I was recording the lines, I still said Hyperdinger. It's all right. I put a little edit in it. But just to say, I cut out, when I do my scripts, as I mentioned before, I will write pages because I just write. And then I go through like 2 processes of like condensing it again. And then I do the lines, record the lines. And then from there, I even edit it down even more because I try to hit that under 10 minutes, which I usually get close. So I give myself buffer, 1 to 2 minutes. I usually hit around 11 minutes. So because I feel like they don't need to be long. They don't need to be longer than that, which is why I do this, because I feel like here, if you want more of an in-depth reason or blah, 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 or me just wanting to talk about this stuff, because again, I do really enjoy talking about storytelling and visual storytelling. This is where this comes into play. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Arcane Season 2, the first part, which is the first 3 episodes of 9. So a third of it. And how it just was like I said in my video, it's just a real drop in quality all around. The only thing that didn't drop in quality, as I mentioned, was in my video, I'm going to say that a lot, probably, was obviously the visuals. My phone. The visuals are just as good. I really like this art style of combining 3D and almost like this brush stroked painted like texture. It's just really nice because one, you can have serious stuff, serious dramatic moments, but then you can also, push the bounds. One of the best things about animation is the disconnect the audience has. It raises the level of disbelief. So all medium, all storytelling, you're playing with people's levels of willingness of disbelief. You have a story that involves magic. People are going to be okay with, certain things, elements of magic because it's a story. You're always playing with people's elements of disbelief. And so the nice thing about animation is you get the extra one. So I really like that they found this art style, which seems to be a pretty, I think, healthy medium in between where you can take things seriously when they need to be, but then you can also play around with the action scenes being like overly colorful and the movement speed and things. You can play around with that, and it doesn't bother the audience or rip them out of the story because their level of disbelief has been pushed up because of the animation. So they did continue to do that, which I really like. I mean, this looks gorgeous. It's so unique and interesting to look at, and they really did a lot with I think more so playing with light like this. Like, I mean, this whole scene is just playing with monotone green light, and it's great. It looks beautiful. So they continued that, which I think I mentioned in my video, I was concerned, which kind of happened. I was concerned about the overall drop in quality from season 1 to season 2, because season 1 took them, depending on the source you go by, 6 to 5 years to complete the first season. And this one, as soon as the season came out, and obviously they were greenlit for a second season immediately because they're so good. They said they wanted to get the second season out in 2 years, and I was like, you should take 5 years again. I feel like you should, you know what, just take 5 years and just, it's worth the wait. You know, some things are just worth doing it right. So I was concerned about that, but then, you know, they obviously get more funding because they did so well, so maybe they had more people, so I was kind of hopeful for that, but it ended up taking them 3 years, I think. Maybe just a little under 3 years to do the second one, but that's still half the time. And I think it suffered in other areas. I think the lack of time, that cutting the process time in half, I think it suffered in clearly the writing. Very clearly the writing, which is kind of the first thing you have to do. So my thinking is maybe, and this is all speculation, maybe that they rushed that part and then, you know, went at business as usual in creating the actual animation part, because this is done just as high quality, if not maybe slightly higher quality than the first season, which was great to see. And the voice acting, again, was really, really good. You know, no complaints about the voice acting, even though I would say the dialogue, which is not the voice actor's fault, the dialogue was a lot weaker and rushed. But all the voice actors in this, again, very believable, was never like pulled out. There was no flat, you know, a lot of times in voice acting, especially in more so, I don't know, I mean, I guess I know why, more so in American voice acting versus, well, I guess I'm only comparing two, because I watch American stuff for the most part, and I watch Japanese stuff. And obviously in Japan, they have like dedicated schools to voice act, like it's a big deal. And it shows in their end product, whereas we have schooling, and I think it's getting more of a bigger thing, but it's kind of not taken as seriously. Some people do take it seriously, and they're very good. But I feel like sometimes when I'm watching voice act, especially when I'm watching the dubs, sometimes they're just like, you can tell the person who's like really going for it, and then you can tell the person who's just kind of like, but I'm glad to say that in Arcane, in the first season and in the second season, the voice acting, it's all really, really good. Really top-notch stuff. You never get pulled out of a scene because of something someone's doing. But yeah, other than those two things, yeah, everything else just kind of dropped. It dropped in quality. I mentioned, you know, the writing, which we'll go through several scenes about. Some of the writing choice, I swear I was bad on this one, and I didn't look up. I assume it was created by the same people. I mean, we could do it now. I assume it was created by the same people, but because it doesn't feel like it was. Let me look it up. All right, now let's look it up. Who? I know it was those two guys who wrote Arcane. I forget I'm terrible at names. I'm sorry about that. I'm real bad at names. Arcane 1. Okay, let's see. It was written by... I know it was two dudes who did a phenomenal job. Where are they? What'd you get? Okay. Christian, Linky, and Alex Yee. Let's see. Did they do the second season? Because it doesn't feel like they did. I think they did. It's not saying they didn't. Let me see. Season 2 writer. Oh, were they written by different people? That would explain a lot. That honestly would explain a lot. Hold on. Trying to find. It's so. I don't know why. I should have. I was my bad. I should have done this beforehand. Whoa. But this is part of the whole process of figuring out. Okay. Written. Okay, so they did have other people write various ones, but it looks like it's the reoccurring from episode to episode, I mean. It wasn't just those two guys. They had obviously other people. I only see one new person. So it was written by the same people. It was a group of people. I mean, I guess I can say all their names to give them credit. It wasn't just Christian Link, Alexi. There's Nick, Luddington, Ash Barron, David Dune, Amanda Overton, but that looks like it's the same people. Like Amanda Overton did the first episode of season 2, Nick Luddington did the second, and Henry Jones did the third. So it was written by the same people. So yeah, I don't know what happened. There's a vague mention to something that the writer's strike happened around that time. I did forget about that. Did forget about the writer's strike, but it seems like it was written by the same people, so I don't really see that being an issue. So yeah, it just seemed like it was written by different people, even though clearly it wasn't. Just the quality had dropped so much that in the back of my mind, I was kind of hoping that, you know, the reason for the decrease was that other people had written. But that's not the case. But yeah, we'll go through. So those are the only, like I said, the only real good things of praise I can say about it is the art direction and the voice acting are just as good as the first season, if not slightly better. But other than that, everything kind of starts to fall apart after that. And I think I mentioned in my review the three main things that I focused on were, what did I focus on? Weak writing, bad character development, and it was really bad, and pacing, which was a big problem. I think the biggest problem in the first 3 episodes of this. Yeah, it was just not good. There was a lot of, and as far as the pacing, there was a lot of, it felt like everything was super rushed, whereas in even like big moments for characters were just kind of glossed over and given like, oh, this happened to them, and then you're like, oh, did that happen? That's interesting. And like I'll give you for an instance, again, we're gonna get into spoilers, but the part of the big, or not big thing, but one of the interesting elements of season 1 was the relationship between Vi and Caitlin, and this kind of like, well, are they just friends or are they more than just friends? And it was kind of this, you know, little thing that we all assumed would develop in, you know, whichever way they wanted to go with it. And as them being some of the key characters of the entire series, you would think that development part would be given time, or at least, you know, a monocrine of telling the audience what's going on. But no, it's just we're given a quick throwaway scene that barely lasts a minute. And it's in between another scene, so it's not even the main focus of what's going on, where you know, they're discussing what to do next as far as like a battle plan in the sewer system. I think we have to wait all the way to episode 3 for that, don't we? In the sewer system, and they kiss, and you know, as an audience member, I was like, oh, was that their first kiss, or have they been in a relationship the whole time and we just didn't know? And it just kind of ends really quickly, and you're just left with, again, if these were two just throwaway characters, you know what I mean, like if these were just two off characters, you know, not that big of a deal, you know, but these are some of your main protagonists we're talking about here, and we're talking about a part of their development that a lot of people have spent a lot of time talking about or shown interest in. and you relegate that part to just a throwaway scene on another lesser throwaway scene in the sewers. And it's just, there's a lot of stuff like that where you have to kind of really focus on what's going on in this, because there's like, they don't give the audience a lot of clues to certain connections, and they just assume that you're going to figure it out, which is fine. You can do that, but it's just, one, it's a big departure from the first season that felt like a much smoother ride, where you really felt like you were being taken through a journey and figuring things out, versus this one where it's just kind of like, blah, 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 and this happened, and like, blah, 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 this happened, and oh, you didn't know, oh, don't worry about it, just move on, next thing. And I don't know why they felt the need to do that, because a good example, again, is we can always reference the first season, where arguably they introduced way more concepts, way more ideas, way more characters, and they gave the audience way more information, and it never felt rushed, and it never felt like you were lost, or like, wait, I had to go back several times to be like, wait, why is this happening? Like, did I miss something? Because I felt like I was losing my mind. I was like, wait, did I blank out? Or, because sometimes, when you're watching something, your mind drifts every now and then. And so I was like, oh, maybe I did that, but I wasn't. I didn't. Like the whole name thing, where we'll get into, there's several characters who never have names. And I was like, there's no way they never said their names through the whole 3 episodes. And I couldn't believe it. I still slightly don't believe it. I went back and watched it twice, but there's still a part of me that cannot believe that. But, yeah, you never had that problem in the first season. You never had that problem in the first season. So I think the best way, to tackle it is we'll just go through, episode by episode. I'm not going to go through everything and talk about everything. I think I'll just skip around like this, and we won't play any sound because YouTube gets mad. Even though they proved I was in the right and reinstated me, as we learned last week with the Hellboy. They got real mad, and then when they got proven wrong, they fixed it pretty quickly. I would say YouTube's actually getting a little bit better on it. They used to be really bad, but they're getting better, so progress. But anyways, so the first season obviously takes place immediately after the first season. Like, it starts off with, the aftermath of what Jinx did, the explosion, and that's how we start off. All good stuff, nothing good. We get, a dramatic scene of, God, I'm gonna mess up their names. I forget. Hammer guy and Victor, I forget his name. Jace and Victor, as he tries to save his life and shoves the the scary evil magic box into his chest. Good idea, good plan. We like that, which was cool. Ultimately, if you're familiar with League of Legends, we can guess. It was obvious from the first season what character Victor is. One of the things in if you're familiar with the first season, is they did a really interesting thing with integrating music into their show, with using unique ways of storytelling. So, like, it would almost be like a sort of, I don't want to say like music video, but it would be kind of like that, where they would play a song and then they would show visuals, not in sort of a linear storytelling, but a way to convey information to the audience of events that have happened. So it was a kind of a unique way to show a lot of information in a short time that was stylized, very interesting, captivated people. And again, like I said, it gave us a lot of information quickly. They utilized that again. It's just, it's not effective. It's effective in some areas and not effective in others, where I feel like, again, well, like I mentioned, season 2 feels like someone saw season 1 and is trying to copy what they did. That's what it feels like. And so it feels like they almost needed to have one of these, music integration with visuals every single episode, which wasn't the case for the first season. They did it I think maybe once or twice. And then this one they do it in every single episode. And it's just like it gets a little cringy. You get this sense of like, one, they're not giving you as much information as they used to. So like not so much in this one. In this first one where we go through Caitlyn's, the funeral and a little bit of the aftermath of what happened. This is good because we don't want to spend time. It's effective here. It's very nice. I liked it. And I was like, oh, good. They're continuing doing that. It works. What I didn't like is where they do it. Here, I didn't want to skip around, but we're going to have to do this. In the beginning of the second episode, where they do a thing with Jinx. Oops. Wow, I didn't know that could do that. What did I just do? What did I just do? How did I do that? There we go. Where they do the same thing. Like, obviously I can't play it, but there's music playing. And then they show visuals trying to give us information, but the information that they give us ends there. So, in the first, 15 seconds, they've given us all the information that they're going to give us. But it continues on for, as you can see, the next, 4 or 5 minutes? So they waste a good 4 or 5 minutes of our time. Because it just doesn't need, like, again, and it doesn't give us any new information. Because the information is, after Silco's death, the remaining factions are fighting. Which we get in this, like I said, the first 15 seconds, as it shows them fighting. And then it just continues to show them fighting for the next 5 minutes. And it's like, okay, we get it. We get it. We get it. The factions are fighting. We get it. No new information is being given. And then on top of that, part of the whole music video is one of the new characters that has no name. This character never has a name, despite playing a crucial role in the final season. She has no name. We are introduced to her. She's running from one of the gang members. We never know why. We never know anything about this character. We don't know her name. We don't know where she came from. We don't know how old she is. We don't know nothing. I don't even think she has any dialogue. I think she just makes, like, noises. So, can she not speak? Maybe. We don't know. But, it doesn't give us, like I said, the main point was that it doesn't give us any information. It just wastes time. And then it comes off, because it's wasting time, because I'm sitting there being like, okay, let's get through it. It comes off as more cringy and, like I said, trying to be cool. And it has the opposite effect. They do it again in the beginning of, they seem to like to do this at the beginning of every episode. Now I'm realizing they do it again at the beginning of the third episode. That one's a little better. It does give information about what has happened. Again, I feel like it was still unnecessary, but it wasn't as long, so we'll give them that. Anyways, that's one of the things. Like I said, the weaker music integration. It just wasn't as good. Wasn't as seamless. It very much ripped you out of the story. The best thing I would say about the story, if we're gonna start off with saying good things, I really did like how they grew the story of Ambessa and Mel, and we're getting, we get a little bit more information, a tiny bit. That's just a small bit of information of, like, the trouble. Because in the first season, we get a hint that her mother is in trouble. We get a sneak peek of, just a tiny sneak peek of how much in trouble she is, as we get to see a little bit of the enemy, and it was pretty cool. This is probably the best part, is all of their scenes. The rest of it is extremely bad. So if I'm going to say the good parts of the writing were definitely centered around Mel and their situation, and anytime they were involved, were probably the strongest parts of the story. Definitely the most interesting, and the character development around them, especially around Mel, is probably the best in this series of season 2 so far. So there is that good thing. But let me see, what are we going to talk about? Blah, blah, blah. I would say one of the things, I'm probably going to mention a lot of character development as far as, because you have two things. You have the continuation from the first season. So you have to remember what your characters were like in the first season, and I think they forgot on a lot of them. I mentioned in my video, I mentioned Hyperdinger, I mentioned Vi, and I mentioned Jinx. I think those were the ones that were the most overtly not at all what the characters are like, because Vi in the first season was very, the bullheaded, stubborn fighter who never gives up. She doesn't back down even when she's gonna lose. And that's her character. She's a fighter. She's, the one who uses her fists. And in this one, she's very much... She starts off kind of like that. She's a little timid, but because, her sister just, killed a lot of people. Important people. So you can understand that why. She's still, like, defiant. She doesn't quite go along with what's going on. And then she immediately, just for no reason, kind of does a 180. And just decides to go along, from that point on, just decides to go along with anything and everything. She's doesn't stand up for herself, very malleable, very much the opposite of what she was first season. And I guess one could argue that, maybe because she has to fight her sister, she's acting like this. But she had to fight her sister in the first season and she didn't act like this. Granted, things are bigger, so maybe that would be the reason, but they don't really show that. Like, they don't really show Vi having like a struggle with, some sort of internal struggle with going after her sister. Every time her sister comes up, she's very stern. That's the one thing she is stern on, is like, I need to take Jinx out. So it doesn't really make sense, but it's passable. I almost said Hyperdinger again. Heimerdinger, he turns into some sort of comic relief character, and I don't know why. I have no idea why they did this. Because in the first one, like, he's quirky for sure. He, has a step to him. But if you rewatch the first season, majority of his scenes are very serious. He's very wise. Obviously, he's been around for 400 or something years. But in here, he acts more like a kind of like fumbling little side, kind of what he looks like, a little side creature, instead of a really wise genius inventor. In this scene where they're sneaking in again, obviously, I mean, they point out some of the stuff too, like, why are we sneaking in when you could just walk in? But it's just him acting, goofy, and like he is the comic relief in this. He's one of the comic relief characters in the second season, which he was definitely, if you watch the first season, he was definitely not a comic relief character. So I don't know why they did that. Like, even when there's a scene where they're like discussing in the lab, and he's just like in the background, just fumbling around and like dropping stuff and falling on his face. Is that in episode 3? It's in episode 3. He's just fumbling around. Oh, there was the kiss scene. Did you see that? Did you see it? You got a little glimpse. This scene where they're like talking. Okay. They're discussing like serious stuff right here. About like what he did with Hextech and how it's having bigger problems. And he's just in the back, just like fumbling around, like playing like a little child. And it's like, that's not who he was. That's not who he was at all. And then I think one of the other ones is Jinx. So at the end of the, first season, Jinx has completely embraced her other side. It's completely gone off the rails, after, murdering her surrogate father figure and whatnot, and then bombing basically the council. She's gone completely off the rails, and everyone in this, like, there's like several scenes where characters are talking about, like, how crazy, how, like, how off the chains Jinx is. She's out of control, crazier than ever. But that's not what we're shown. We're shown every scene that Jinx is in, she's pretty sane for the most part. Like, there's this scene where she's pretty much like, and you can see like Civic here's like, I gotta, because she's thinking she'll be crazy, obviously, but she's not. She's very calm, very, thinks about her actions beforehand. There's a part where she's ambushed by her sister and a crew who are coming to, take her out. And she makes, like, very clear, rational decisions during that encounter to evade and run away instead of engaging, which an insane person would probably have done, or Jinx probably would have done in season 1. Because she does do that in season 1. There are several instances in season 1 where she's either outnumbered, outgunned, or should run away, and she doesn't because she relishes that, being in it. And she doesn't do that. I think is it in this? Yeah, this is the scene. So they get a tip where she is. I assume they got a tip where she is. Again, they kind of rushed through the story, so it's a little confusing, but I'm pretty sure one of the people tipped them off where she was. But they never say that. But it's heavily implied, I think. But yeah, see, she even has the drop on them. She has the upper hand. She's got the high ground, as Obi-Wan would say. But she doesn't do it. Because it's not a good decision to do. And she's still obviously not going to kill her sister. Like, these are all rational decisions. Again, it's one of those things that happens often in bad storytelling. Mostly in visual storytelling, is where the writer is telling you something you should believe, but what they're showing you doesn't add up with what they're telling you. So there's a disconnect, and you get ripped out of the story. And I think that's what's happening here with Jinx, is that everyone's saying she's so insane, and she doesn't do anything insane, though. She doesn't do anything crazy. In fact, I think she's more sane now than she was in the first season, which doesn't make sense. Again, pointing to, I feel like the writers forgot. They forgot what their characters were like. Not all of them. Not all of them. Mel is still good. Caitlyn's still pretty good. Pretty on par. She's going through a minute. I like her dictator arc. I like her going full authoritarian dictator. It's pretty cool. That's fun. I enjoy that. And it's a little extreme, but you could see how one could be pushed into this. And she is being pushed into it, so they make that clear. So again, for some characters, like I said, some characters, they're like spot on exactly what they were, and then some are just, I don't know what happened. And I mentioned in the video too, forgetting what their characters are about. There's at the end of, or in the climactic scene of episode 3, there's a fight scene, naturally, and where is it? Caitlyn gets into a fist fight with Savika. Close, no holds bar fist fight with Savika, and wins. What? No. Oh gosh, that would not happen. Yeah, and there's. I'm trying to find it. They flipped at the end here. They go ham on flipping through so many things. See, she's fighting. Look, and Savika has a brand new, literally in the previous episode, Savika gets a new arm. Jinx makes her a new arm, and it's like beefed up and crazy. Savika refuses to use it during the entire fight where she's fighting Caitlyn for no reason. And during this part, as you can see, they're doing something with the hex stuff, and so it's messing up their weapons. It's messing up her gauntlets, and it's messing up Caitlyn's gun, so we can see there. So they don't even have their hex weapon. So not only is Caitlyn fighting Savika one-on-one, which she would never win, she's doing it without a weapon, and Savika has a new souped-up arm. How is she losing? How is that possible? It's not. And the stupid thing is, right before this scene, they have a group. They have like a task force, and then they decide to send them away right before they engage with Jinx, because they're like, oh, Jinx is gonna be too much for them. Again, the whole, you know, she's crazier than ever. Like, the whole, that. And it's just like, if they would have not sent them away, this would have turned out different. And I think it would have made it better, because then you could have had Savika fighting, you know, 4-on-1, which would have made sense, as in their hex weapons wouldn't have worked. You know, you can still have, you know, Vi and Caitlyn, not Vi and Caitlyn, Vi and Jinx fighting, because Jinx, remember, she's still super powered from, you know, getting injected with all that sweet shimmer goo. But Vi doesn't have her gauntlets through most of it, so you could even split it up. Like, it could have been split up. There's 4 members. It could have been split up. You know, it could have been or 5 members. It could have been 3v1 and 2v1, which would have made sense because again, none of their weapons would have worked because the hex things are going crazy. So it would have made more sense, and that, I think that would have been a much more believable reason of why, you know, Savika losing. She's fighting 3-on-1, and even though she has a souped up arm, it's still 3-on-1. Instead of, you know, fighting Caitlyn by herself with no weapon in hand-to-hand combat while Savika has a super weapon. It's just a lot of there was a lot of, I mentioned in my video, there's not a lot of things were not well thought out. They just weren't. And it's evident in this first scene, which I go into in my video, but we can go into a little bit more. So in the beginning scene, the first action fight scene, a gang attacks. You know, they attack for a reason. It's one of the factions trying to get revenge on Jace for killing his son, and they're just attacking everyone because there it's chaos now that all the leaders are dead. Well, Silco's dead and a few of the council members are dead. So it's a little bit of chaos. So it's kind of like a power play, and they're coaxed into it. And we'll get into that later, but it's a fight scene. So they pretty much, the top stars get cut off because they don't want to use hex weapons. They still don't want to use hex weapons in this, you know, inevitable war that is kind of gonna happen. Sorry, my cat was scratching on some boxes that I have in there. So they get attacked, and they're obviously getting massacred because, you know, they have their super weapons, and like I said, the topsiders are caught off guard without, you know, their hex weapons. So it's just a massacre. Obviously, the heroes don't get killed because plot armor. But the whole thing is like, oh, they're gonna die. Like, some of them are gonna, you know, they hint, of course, that some of them are going to die because there's just no way that they're gonna win this fight. And so Vi has the brilliant idea to, let's see, get to it, leave the battlefield and to go retrieve hex weapons. And it's like, oh, are there hex weapons nearby? Did someone bring one just in case, maybe? You know, did Jace have one somewhere behind stage? No. They're in this big building, you know. Who knows how many football fields away? Who knows? Super far away. So she's gonna run. So she runs all the way to the building and then has to scale, you know, however many floors, at least 20 floors or so. The buildings are huge. So she runs through while everyone's being attacked and still being, you know, she runs through all this, has to find it, like, which, first of all, like, how does she even know where they are? Because she doesn't live here, or, you know, she has walked around a bit, but how would she know where he's keeping all his stuff? At least someone had the thought, at least someone had somewhat of a thought to how, you know, how she would even obtain it right here with the dropping, you know, the dropping of the keys. Because, like, how would she even if she knew where it was, could find it in time, how would she even gain access to it? And they do it right here, I assume. They never show her picking up the keys, but I assume this scene exists to show that keys were dropped, she probably picked them up, and, you know, unlocked all the doors and stuff to get the hex weapon. But she somehow gets all that, and then brings the massively huge heavy hex weapon all the way down in about 30 seconds. Because these guys are fighting for their lives and they're barely holding on. but she somehow gets it. You know, I make the joke, I do a little thing about, you know, she runs faster than the Flash, which she would have had to in order to achieve this feat. Which is bad enough as it is. It's bad enough that, I mean, this is amateur level. So this is the only thing that I will, you know, as far as like when I do reviews, I keep emotions out of it as much as possible. Because there's a big difference between opinion. When you're critiquing something, there's a big difference between opinion and feedback. Most people don't know the difference. Like a majority of the comments, which we'll go through, are not critiques. They're just flat out emotional responses. I try to keep those out. You know, I try to keep, you know, from, you know, insulting. Usually when you get to the point of like insulting something, there's a difference between critiquing and insulting. I usually try to steer away too much unless it's so egregious that I just can't help it. And this is one of them. Like this part of this scene is it's such an amateur level mistake. It's crazy that this is in a professionally done product. It is downright unacceptable. It's crazy. I would expect something like this from beginner high school storytelling. I would expect this from even college level high school storytelling, but professional storytelling, no excuse. Especially as I mentioned, it continues on. Not only did you break the laws of time and physics in your scene, it ultimately didn't play any role because she doesn't know there's like a funny scene where she doesn't know how to use the hammer because it's not her weapon. Which is dumb because they show her using it 2 seconds earlier. So it's like, what do you mean? You just used it. You just used it. How did you not? What? Anyways, she tries to, you know, use it to save her friends. It doesn't work, without the other dude's help. And she ends up missing because, you know, who comes to save the day is, Ambessa and her troops at the last minute. So again, not only did this scene break the laws of time, physics, and reality, it also was pointless. Because if you're going to have this part where Ambessa comes in and saves everyone at the last minute anyways, why did you have Vi do why was any of this in there? You could have just left Vi down here fighting, you know, with Caitlyn. She could have been down with these people, you know, back to back, being like, oh god, this is it. We're about to get, you know, massacred, and then get saved just like everyone gets saved anyways. And it's just again, I left this in the video because I think this is one of the biggest, you know, most blatant obvious signs of the lackadaisical or sloppiness in season 2 versus season 1. Because nothing even comes close to this level, this egregious level of a mistake in season 1. Like I obviously was knew I was going to talk about this today, so I was earlier today I was going over in my head, you know, season 1, and I was like, was there, because I've watched it so many times, and I was trying to go over my head. I was like, was there anything like this in the first season? And it's just like there's not in any way. I'm trying to think right now. There really isn't. There really isn't any, you know, narrative mistakes like this. Yeah, no, not even close. So it's just like, when I watch, and especially in the first episode, I was just like, oh god, I really hope this is just a one-off and not how this season's gonna go, but looks like it is. But yeah, and it just there's a lot of these pointless, like, why are you showing me this? You're wasting my time. You can't do this in visual storytelling. Like I mentioned last week when we talked about the Hellboy movie, you cannot, in visual storytelling, every single image you show has to serve a purpose because you only have the audience's attention for so long. It's not a book. You know, in a book, you can go off all sorts of tangents because you're reading a book. The audience has gone into knowing they're going to spend a lot of time with you in whatever story you're telling. The same goes for when you're going to go with audiences who are doing a show. Like, you know, you're only going to get 30 minutes to an hour. With a movie, you know, it used to be an hour and a half, which I think they should go back to, but you know you're going to get 2 hours, let's say. So every single thing has to have a purpose. And there's so much in this where it's just like, why are you showing me this? You just wasted 5 minutes of your, precious, you don't have that much time to waste. And they do a lot of that in this. Like I mentioned earlier, they do that in the Jinx scene. They do it here, obviously. That stupid scene with Vi. And it's just sprinkled throughout. It's just like, what are we doing? What are you doing? Why are you showing me this? And even just, there was a lot of, in the first season, the reason it was so compelling is because they would often, a narrative trick, or not trick, it's not a trick. A narrative style is to have your audience think you're going to do one thing and then do another thing. Comedians often do this to create humor as well. They think that they take you down one path, and then the funny part is when they divert from that. And the unexpectedness is what makes it entertaining. Narratives do that a lot, and they do that. They did that a lot in the first season, and I assumed they were going to do that a lot with this season. They do not do that. There's a lot of like a big reveal that they do at the end of episode 3 was that this whole thing right here, this whole engagement, this whole, them ambushing the gang ambushing the memorial service was all a big plan by Mbessa and her troops. It's a big thing at the very end of episode 3. It's like, oh, and I was confused because I was like, didn't we already know that in episode 1? I was like, I knew that. I knew why are you making it seem like we knew that, right? In episode 1. And I went back because I was just like, maybe I cannot tell you how many times I went back through this because I just assumed I made the mistake. Because I always assume like, oh, when something so egregious like this happens, I always assume it's my fault. I'm always like, I must have been scatterbrained. I must have made the mistake. I must have, missed something. My cat did something. I looked away and I didn't hear, human stuff. So I always go back and look. And I guess it was supposed to be unknown, but it was so blatantly obvious. So blatantly obvious that it was all orchestrated by Mbessa. Because they show us that you would just know. Like, I knew that Mbessa did this. I was like, oh, this is how she's going to get, people in to the thing, because she told her little henchman, she gave a nod to her henchman to go do something when things weren't going her way. And then they mentioned like, someone up here must have helped them do this. And you're like, well, everyone's dead. And the only people who would do that, there's only one person who would do that. And you're like, well, it's Mbessa. And then, of course, when she shows up at the very last second to save people, you're just like, oh, like, why are you all armored up and suited up? Like, this battle takes place within, like, 2 minutes or 5 minutes of fighting. Like, why is your army all suited up and ready to go? Like, so, and there's more like they talk about, when they talk about someone must have helped him, they like show Mel's face. Who could have done it? So I assumed in the back of my head there was going to be, possibly like what I mentioned earlier, they lead, good storytelling, they lead you down one path and then they flip the script on you at the end. So I assumed maybe at some point they were going to be like, she didn't do it, it was someone else, because that would have blown everyone's mind, like, because it was so obvious that Mbessa was the one who was behind it. But they didn't do that. It was just like, they at the end of episode 3, there's a montage of them showing her doing, orchestrating the thing, and they make it seem like it's supposed to be like the big reveal. Nobody knew. What do you mean? Everyone knew. Oh God. It's just, again, it shows the quality drop, which was the main thing about my video that I titled It's Weaker. The quality just dropped. It happens, like I said, the first season is so phenomenal. I don't, sitting here, it's nothing. The writers shouldn't feel bad about not being able to catch lightning in a bottle twice. You know what I mean? It's disappointing, sure, but season 2 not being that very good doesn't diminish the accomplishments that they achieved in the first season. It's still good. I still recommend the first season, even though the second season's not great so far. I still recommend the first season. I'm still gonna watch the first season probably throughout my life. It's that good. So, but yeah, it's just, there's just a lot. The drop in quality was it was just disappointing. But like I said, not exactly surprising, again, because quality was just so high in the first season. And then, like I mentioned earlier, them taking half the amount of time to complete season 2 than they did the first season, I am sure played a big role. More so than we probably know, or we'll probably ever know. But yeah, the writing, just a disappointment. I'm trying to think of the other bigger events that are worth talking about. Most of them, like I said, the show isn't terrible. It's not good. It's just kind of okay-ish. And if I'm being really honest, it's mostly riding off the coattails of the greatness that the first season did, which is probably why I'm being not as harsh on it. But I still can't overlook a lot of the stuff. A lot of this stuff. It's just, especially the amateur level mistakes, or like I mentioned earlier, this is the scene again. Pivotal moment between two of your main characters. Where they reveal, or again, I don't know if they're revealing in the scene that this is the first, intimate moment between Caitlyn and Vi, or if they've been together for a while. I think, based off of trying to read, an animated person's body language, I think they've been together for a while. I don't know, and that's the thing, is which again would be fine for characters that are not important. These are your main characters, the people, arguably some of the characters people are most interested in. The people your story it very much revolves around Vi and her family. So you would think you would pay more time, to this. See, I think I can't tell now. Rewatching, I can't tell. Is this the first kiss, or is this are they in a? Now I'm not watching it without the sound and them, the dialogue, and just looking at body language, animated body language. But I can't tell. I can't tell if this is this their first kiss, or have they been together for a while? I don't know. I don't know. You don't know. Do the writers know? I don't know. And it's just, oh gosh. And when I was looking, I just realized when I was looking back, I was wondering how he got hurt, because they don't show how he got hurt, but they do actually show how he got hurt. In the beginning, in the little music video part, I realized when I was going back editing this, so I was like, how did he get hurt? Why is he limping all of a sudden? And later he's hurt as well, and you're like, what? I don't understand what happened. And they show it in this part right here. But the bad part is this that isn't consistent later, and I'll show you what I mean, because I saw this while editing. Okay, so they show where he gets hurt. Again, I feel like this music part was effective because it gives insight of what they've been doing, and gives a lot of crucial information that you don't want to waste time. It's important information, but you don't need to spend time on it. So I feel like this was effective here. And it's not long. It's only a minute, barely 2 minutes, which is, again, a lot different than, okay, this is where he gets hurt. See, they show that he triggers one of Jinx's grenades, but he's the shield guy, so, and this is the problem with the inconsistency. So they show us that one Jinx grenade can harm someone, even this big guy who has a shield. Okay, let me try to show you how big this dude is and how big his freaking shield is. It covers his whole body, and then... Okay, there. Ah, damn it. Okay, let me see if I can pause this. Let me show you. Okay. Look how big this dude is. He's all armored up. He has a full-on shield. And they showed us that one Jinx grenade blowing up, you know, off to the side of him over here was enough to get through the shield and his armor to injure him, as they show him limping away later. Okay? They show us that. Remember that. One Jinx grenade is able to deliver that amount of power. Okay? See if I can nail... Oh! I remembered, because I was editing. Now let's remember the power of one Jinx grenade. Remember, there's 3 here. One, the exact same one that they showed us in the scene before, the exact same one that they showed one of these grenades that was farther away from the shield guy than this, went through his super shield and his armor and injured him. And then they show us Vi being surrounded in close proximity by 3 of those exact same grenades, getting blown up by them. Here, she gets thrown. Ba-boom! Not injured at all. Sloppy. Very sloppy. And it's just, there's a lot of that in this. Like I said, I focused on the bigger things, but there's just so many of these little things like that that don't exist in the first season. So many of these just little, because they just, it's like the little, you know, people say the little things don't matter, but they do, because they, especially when you have so many that they're just throughout the entire story. It's just, oh god. So much bad stuff in this. It just doesn't. Ugh. Such a disappointment. But let's move on. Let's move on to the other one. The other point that I said is character development, which I already touched on, them forgetting the personalities of the previous characters. I want to talk about the new characters, because we're introduced to several, and some of them are fine. Let's start with the good ones. So we're introduced to semi-introduced. He was in the first season, but he was in like as half a second scene, and it was kind of like you never really thought he was going to go anywhere. One of we get the slum lords, the several factions. We get introduced to this guy, this one. I don't remember his name, but I'm sure they said it several times. I'm sure they said his name. They have to have said his name for the amount of time he was in it. So we get pretty much introduced into this guy a lot. He plays several crucial roles. I feel like his fine as being introduced as a pretty much, I mean, like I said, he makes one like cameo scene in the first season. You know, he's at the table when Silco does his speech and he poisons him with gas, and he just kind of like, oh, he doesn't say anything. He just gets gassed, and that's it. And this one, he gets talking. We get an understanding of how he is. You know, he's kind of like the scumbag. You know, the little dirtbag. What he looks like, a little dirtbag. He's a little dirtbag, and he acts like it. You know, he clearly doesn't have as much power as the other factions, or at least I assume, because anytime we see the other factions, we rarely see the leaders. It's usually just their people. But with him, it's always him. Like he has obviously dudes, but it's usually just the 4 or 5 guys that are around him. So I assume he's not as powerful. But we get enough backstory about him. We get enough to know, but like, you know, he likes close infighting because he, you know, has a lot of, you know, mechanic. He obviously controls that type of technology. Like all his bros have that type of technology. He also like constantly offers Savika a new arm. So he's literally an arms dealer. So he's fine. Like this is a good example of introducing a new character, which is fine. What isn't is some of the other characters. And granted, I understand that some of them, like the new characters they introduce, the new characters that they introduce are not in, are not, they don't have much screen time. Which would be fine. So maybe new characters that don't have screen time, we don't learn about them. That's fine. The problem is that these characters play crucial roles in the story, and you can't have characters, even if they're side characters, play such crucial roles and have us know literally nothing about them. Like, I make the joke, which is not even a joke, it's a serious observation, is that four out of the 3 characters, so they introduced about like 5 new characters that play pivotal roles. And 2 of them have names. The other 3 don't have names. Like, they give us so little information, we don't even have their names. Like this guy. I mean, I lose this guy because he's in the majority of the scenes, but we never learn his name. Does he even talk? He does talk. He has one line. He has one line right here, and that's it. He asked her if Vi lost somebody in the tragedy, or the event that happened, and that's it. I think that's the only thing he says. But we don't know anything about him, and the whole time I'm watching this, I'm expecting at some point, because he's wearing a blue jacket, he's got a unique design. The whole thing of, like, especially like in anime, who the main characters are because they have like a unique, they don't look like a generic NPC. So you're like, I was just assuming at some point he was going to be somebody. Like, I assume he was going to be like, oh, that's an ex-enforcer, but he was a loose cannon cop who didn't play by the rules, and so he got kicked out, which would make sense why he joins Caitlyn's team, because she's doing some offhanded things and she wants people like this. Or, maybe he's like a general or something who disgraced him. Something. Not just some dude on the street who, again, he gets put on the elite team with hex weapons because he blocks one attack with a piece of metal. And they're like, you know what? You're the new shield guy. You're going to come with us and do dangerous things. It's like, why would he even agree to that? We don't know anything about this man. Why would he even say yes? Like, it kind of makes sense for the other 2, because they're enforcers. So it makes sense, your captain or a higher up says, hey, I want you to be on this elite team. You're not going to be like, no. You could say no, but for the most part, you're not going to be like, no. You're an enforcer. You're getting a huge promotion. You're getting some pretty sweet weapons. You're getting, you're ranking up. You're not going to say no. But again, why would this dude? Here he is. Hold on. I'm waiting for here it is. Here's his moment. Wait for his moment of legendary glory. Here it is. Oh, there you go. See, he got a piece of metal, I think from the carriage. I think that's the door that got ripped off. And he used it to block this it was the biggest dude's. It was the biggest dude's attack. He blocked it once. That's all he does. But I think that qualifies him to be part of the elite team, to be the shield guy of the elite team. And again, it's like, why would he agree? He was drunk in the streets like 2 minutes ago. Why would he agree to this? Who is this person? And again, you could say like he doesn't play a pivotal role, but he's part of the elite team that they go down through. And if you're going to say he's not a big deal, if you're going to go that path, you're going to make that argument that he's not a big deal to the story, so we don't need to know anything about him, then why should we care? There's a point, like I mentioned when before they do the kissing scene, they split up from their team because they're like, I don't want them to get hurt because I care about them so much. Like, okay, well, why should we care? You always have to ask yourself, why should we care? Why should I care about this character? Why would they split up? Like, why, even if they did engage, this is where he gets introduced. This is the next time we see him. He's shield guy now. He's shield. What a legend. Going from drunk to shield guy. In one episode. No name. What a legend. What a hero. I wish we could carve his name under a statue or something, but we don't know it. Why should we care then? Why was it important for them to split up? If one of them or all of them died in the fight with Savika and Jinx, who cares? They're basically just better drawn. Like in the first season, they had you could always tell who the throwaway, characters were, especially when it came to the enforcers, because they wore helmets. You know, they always had the gas mask helmet. You knew they were an important character if they were an enforcer, if they weren't wearing, you know, the gas mask. So all these people are not wearing the gas mask, so they're important. As per going on, continuing the system you've established. Why should we, again, if you're going to say they're unimportant, then why didn't you just make them gas mask guys? One, why did you give them any sort of personalities if there was no point to it? You're just wasting time then. If they're not important, then why have any character design? Two, if they were so unimportant, then why not just have them die? Again, like I said, this would not only would this solve the problem of, you know, the Caitlyn getting into a fist fight with Savika, because then it would be 3-on-1 or possibly 4-on-1. That would solve that problem. Who cares if they died? And then it would actually boost the stakes if a couple of them died in the process. Yeah, that's a great way to increase stakes, is if nobody dies, then there's no consequences for anything we're doing. There's no stakes. You know, people died in the first season. So it's just a lot. I mean, a lot of people died in the first season, especially in the first couple episodes. So it's just, again, no matter which way you want to take that argument, it doesn't hold water. Because if they're not important, then why give them unique character designs or somewhat? Because they have somewhat of a personality. Like but we're kind of pulling, like, you know, Maddie's kind of perky and, you know, happy, you know, kind of a perky person. This guy is kind of a stoic dude, which is kind of negates the point where they're like, because the whole reason they separate is because she freaks out because Jinx makes like a voodoo doll of her. It was like, okay, she's seen worse. You've shown us her seeing worse. But she's like, they're gonna get she's gonna psychologically torture them, and they're not gonna last a minute. It's like, this dude, this stoic man who doesn't flinch about anything, he's like a robot. So that doesn't even make sense. Again, it's just the more you look at season 2, the more it unravels, unfortunately. And it's just, what are you doing? What are you doing? Especially, I mean, the funny thing is, the first season being so good, it both helps season 2 and it hurts it at the same time. Because it's, like I said, season 2 is only mildly okay from being full on bad, which, I mean, it is kind of bad. I only say it's mildly okay because it is riding off some of the riding on the coattails of some of the storylines from the first season. It's just bad. But my point is, the reason, so that helps it. The first season helps it. But the second part of it where it doesn't help it is because we can just compare. You can just compare the first season, which arguably the first season had more to prove because we didn't know anything. This was all new. So they had to introduce way more characters. They had to introduce way more concepts and ideas. They had to introduce the entire world to us and how it works. And somehow, in the same amount of time, they did way more efficiently and better than they did now, which should have been easier because you don't have to establish the world building. That's done. You don't have to establish more than half the characters, because that's done. So how are you still falling through the cracks when it should have been easier? And again, another example of, again, quality. Again, we don't know. Maybe the writer's strike was more detrimental than we could know, you know. But again, I feel like you could have just take time, but, you know, maybe they were under a contract with Netflix. Or like, you got to do it now. You can't, you know, maybe that's why they were like, we're going to try to do it under 2 years. Because maybe Netflix was like, either do it at this time or not at all. I don't really see Netflix doing that because they're kind of, you know, they're kind of known for being desperate to take any deal or anything because they just want content. But maybe they were. Maybe we'll never know. But what we do know, which is painfully clear, which I've been spending the past hour putting out in great detail, is that the quality has severely dropped from the first season. Yeah, bummer. Bumsies. There's still other characters. Oh, I forgot about Victor, because he's just, not that much in. His character development's pretty fun. It's good. You know, after the crystal being shoved into his chest, he becomes a sort of god, I guess you could say. And they're kind of like prepping up for like, I would say like his arc and what I mentioned earlier, Ambessa's and Mel's arc. You know, I forget their last name. God, what's their last name? Whatever, their family arc. Here's Hyperdinger being a buffoon some more. Is the best part, like, of story. So he awakens and he's like kind of like, you know, turning into what he's going to turn into. So he's kind of taking on this like Jesus role, new savior, which is interesting and fun. And it's, you know, fun to see him now because now he is fused with the Arcane. You know, he's kind of like robot. He's still kind of himself, where he has his memories and stuff and feelings, kind of, but he's more very robotic. And he's interesting and done well. So it's again, like I said, the show, it's not terrible. Not nowhere close to the worst thing that came out this year. Not even close. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's good. I wouldn't say it's good. The amount of bad so far. I think that, I mean, obviously in my video, I knew people were gonna say, like, that's why I put it funny. And if you watch my video, at the very end of the video, I purposefully said, I know people are gonna say, oh, it's only the first part. You gotta, and that was like the most common comment that I got. It was like, it just came out. And it's like I said, which is one, obviously I put it at the end to show that they didn't watch the video. Because of course they didn't. They're just seeing something they don't like and then having an emotional response. Still, this is a third of the entire show. A whole third of the entire show. Even if the last two parts are phenomenal, just like the first season, just as good, 100% amazing, that's still only 67%. That's still 33 to 34% bad. So you still get a D. That's still a D. That's a 67% at best. You got a D. I mean, maybe we'll be nice and give you a 70, so you get a C minus. That's still not good. And again, like I said, we just have to go back to the first season. If you watch the first 3 episodes of the first season, they're phenomenal. They're amazing. They're so well done. The difference is night and day. And again, like I said, I put that purposely at the end of my video because I knew they weren't going to watch it. I knew that was going to be I will sometimes preempt things where I will think of the most laziest response that I can think of and then attack that because it is lazy. And now you make fun of it because it is lazy. Because yeah, if it was one episode, sure. That's why I have a problem with reviewing TV shows, which is kind of like I like Netflix because they release everything. Usually release everything at once so I can actually critique it. I like to watch at least, you know, a third of the show before I'm going to give any sort of critique. Because by that point, as I mentioned earlier, even if it drastically changes, becomes good, it's still bad in the beginning. It doesn't change the badness. But yeah, like I just finished the Penguin series. It's so good. The Penguin series was good, and it's like, I don't know. I was gonna do a review on it, but it's like, is there kind of a point to doing a review on it because it's been out for so long? Like, maybe not. I don't know. There's some movies coming out that I would much rather do a review on, since I have to think about my time. Like, I can only do one review a week, because I, you know, work a full-time job on top of, you know, streaming and putting out 2 videos a week plus short every single weekday. So I have to be very careful with my time. So, but a third of the show is enough to see how it's going to go. It's enough, especially in this case when you can clearly see how bad it's gotten. Which is, again, ultimately disappointing. But you know, the first season was so good. It was kind of always assumed that it, you know, it would have been really impressive to do it again. It is a miracle to do it once. Asking for 2 miracles is like, you're getting greedy. You're getting greedy. But still, in the fairness of honest, critiques in good faith, I can't just overlook these things. But yeah, I think that was pretty much it for the character development. It was just not. It was a problem. And then the pacing, which I mentioned, I think I already mentioned. I think I went through most of that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Is there anything else worth talking about in this? Good or bad? Is there anything else worth talking about this? Not really. I mean, again, I mentioned this in my video. It's not super worth talking about, but since we're here, we're in the exact part. There's a lot of in the fight scene, especially in this one in particular, there's a lot of the bad guys standing around to wait for the good guys to win. There's a lot of that, which is like, it happens a lot throughout the other parts too. This one was just the most where it was the most obvious. But the one cool thing about this fight scene is this fight scene has the most like over the top stylization in it when the Savika fights the little rat man here. It has the most over the topness in it, which was really cool. I like that. Especially with her new arm, like Jinx gives her the new arm. And we get to see like the wildness and the stupidness of it, but it's fun. And like I said, they go like this, like they go over the top with the graphics in a really cool way. So that was really good. I like that. I did enjoy that. Part of like a positive thing. But yeah, other than that, I think I pretty much nailed all of it. I think I'll go through. We can go through some of the comments on the videos. On my little critique, so we can go through. I think it's. I was thinking about it today, and it's funny, because I didn't go to art school, but my degree is in fine arts. So I took a plethora. I took as many art classes as I could possibly take, because I just enjoyed it so much. And it was I did most of it at community college because it was cheaper, and the professors are better at community colleges. Because they pay more and the hours are flexible. But oddly enough, one of the most valuable skill sets that I learned was from art school, which is really funny to think about because most of it's, superb. I mean, I use it for my job and stuff like that, and it's useful. But for the most part, like most of it's, it's art. It's art. But I think one of the biggest things that I learned from that experience, which I think if we could some way, especially nowadays, is I learned how to recognize and give critiques. And I think that is a crucial skill set that nowadays, in the age of commenting on, social media, video, whatever, news and all that, I think that's a critical skill that needs to be kind of like, like reading and critical thinking are all skill sets that I think people really need. I think being able to differentiate criticism from opinion, I think is a crucial skill set that I randomly, just by default of the world, that I got this really good skill because in art school, I had many various different, different types of art classes. And every single week in all of those classes, I had to get up in front of the entire class and present my work. So I had to do that like a couple times a week. And in that process, the reason they do that is so that the other students can, so you're basically standing in front of all your peers and they critique you. And the reason they do that is, one, so you learn to accept critique because it's important for growth. And two, is so that you can recognize the difference between what a critique, I'm trying to think of another word for it. I said it earlier. It started with an H. I'll just say critique. What a critique is and what it isn't. And part of that was because not only did I have to do that, you also had to give critiques. So part of the curriculum was when you weren't being up there in front of everybody, you were being singled out. They would call you and be like, you give a critique of this whatever it was, whatever class we were in. And if you didn't give a critique, they would call you out. They'd be like, that's not a critique, try again. They're like, that's opinion, try it again. And so by doing this over and over and over again in a public setting, I gained the skill set of being able to recognize opinion from emotional response, from a critique, from, it's just a skill set that I learned. And I think it's a skill set that I think society at large would benefit from. So it's just funny that I got that in art school, because majority of the if you put anything online, you're going to get comments regardless, and most of them are going to be negative. It's just the internet. It's what you can do. But there's a difference between getting negative emotional responses than getting negative critiques. So like negative critiques are welcome. Negative comments are just, negative emotional responses are just that. They're negative emotional. You want to make sure that you're not getting too many actual negative critiques, because that means you're doing a lot wrong. Versus, it's funny, on the internet, you actually want to get a lot of negative emotional response. If you want to be popular, you want to get a lot of negative emotional responses and not actual valid critiques. And so most of the comments that I got from which again I mentioned at the beginning, I knew was going to happen because Arcane, being attached to League of Legends, being a pretty big IP, people are just going to get emotional, which doesn't excuse their behavior, but I understand it. One of the biggest problems I always have with people when they try to downplay the importance of story and storytelling, that like when someone gets upset because they're doing a terrible job with Star Wars or whatever, and they're always like, it's just a movie, it's just a whatever story. I think it's very, I don't want to say ignorant, but it is. I want to say it's very, you're not taking into account how important story is to human beings in general. Like, we experience majority of life through storytelling. That's why storytelling is such a big thing with, especially back in the old days with the elders keeping the stories to learn valuable lessons and, teach things and learn how to deal with stuff and just deal with the stresses of life at large. Story is a big part of people's lives. It's important. It's integral to being a human being. So I understand when people get emotional or super attached to the stories that are important, because they are important. Again, doesn't excuse actions of, being horrible to someone. Like, you shouldn't do that. But I understand. Stories are important. I understand you're going to have a sort of defensiveness when someone's talking about your story, regardless if they have valid critique or not. You're going to be defensive. I understand that. But again, we'll go through and talk about some of the critiques were pretty funny. But most of them were just emotional responses. Again, but we'll go through them because I think I'm trying to think. Is there anything else I want to say about? This before we get into it? I don't think so. I think I'm gonna, let me flip over. I don't think I got this ready in time. Let me see. Did I prepare it? Nope, I forgot. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna flip over to this real quick. I'm not gonna go anywhere. I'm just gonna flip over this so you can't see my screen. Unless you look at my sunglasses, you can see my screen. Let me pull this up. Okay, so we can go. Let's see. ChonkyPuFFs. 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 Alright, where's the video? There she is.
Your health?
Nope. No sound, please. No sound, please. Okay. Let me just make sure that no one says select fan. I don't think you can do that. But I think it'll be, like I said, most of these I already went over most of these critiques, and most of the critiques I honestly went over in my video. They're not critiques, they're emotional, they're opinions. Most of them I went over in my thing, but I think it's a good practice to go through so that, again, like I said, the skill set of being able to differentiate between opinion and an actual critique, because those are different things. Those are very, very different things. Opinion is how you feel about something. A critique is you giving, a critique is you using components of what, like, for instance, this. You notice how when I did the critique of Arcane, I didn't go out and just say, this is dumb, I don't like it, blah, 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 blah. I didn't do that. I said, this is weaker than the one before it. I said, the writing is weaker, and then I gave several examples of why that is. That's a critique. If I would have just said, this is bad, I don't like it, boo, that's opinion. There's a difference. Like I always say, just because you like something doesn't make it good. Just because you don't like something doesn't make it bad. We have parameters set by people who, a lot of very smart people who dedicated their lives to the study of visual storytelling and storytelling at large, left behind all of their work for us to understand. Okay? There are parameters. Again, whether you like a movie or not is subjective. Whether a movie is good or bad is objective. We have standards. We have knowledge to apply to things. And you can debate that, but you have to keep in the realm of that objectivity, not in the realm of your feelings. I say that often. And I know people get confused. But let's go through these, because these were great. There weren't that many. There were more comments than usual, but there weren't that many. But let's go through them again as a healthy exercise, if you will. A healthy bit of exercise. And we can do it just like my teacher. Just like my professors used to do. They used to yell at me and be like, that's not a critique, do it again. You're just like, I don't know what to say. And they're like, you're going to do it until you get it right. Oh. No, but it was a good lesson to learn. Alright, let's go through. We'll just go by the top. Clearly not all opinions deserve to be listened to. Bait used to be believable. Bait used to be believable. I don't even know what this is saying. This is a new one. Clearly not all opinions deserve to be listened to. Bait used to be believable. I don't understand. Is he saying because I said it was weak? I did a really good thumbnail. Oh, my thumbnail was so good. Okay, we'll skip that one. That's fine. Dude, the show isn't done. This was the comment. Like I do like a little short on my social medias where I like kind of take the funny parts and do like a little like 1-minute clip to promote my videos. Also, I like making them because they're fun. And that was the main one on that, which is more understandable than here, because at least on, like TikTok or Instagram, it wasn't the full video, so like there's no way. I mean, obviously the links are there so they can find it, but I don't hold it against them for not clicking on it. But like in the video where I specifically addressed that exact critique, it just shows you didn't watch the video. So at 9:50, I did the exact same thing. 9:50. Because each episode was so good, I had. Oh, okay, yeah. At that point, at 9:50, I was talking about again a difference between. I think, did I mention this? God, I go over the same dialogue over and over again in my videos and editing. I can't remember if I just talked about it, but I was talking about this part where, the first season, when the first season came out, before it got super popular, I had heard about it, and I think it was like 1 a.m. in the morning, and I was like, and it wasn't quite ready to go to bed, but I was like, well, I'll check this out. I'll watch the first episode to decide if I'm going to watch it, more tomorrow, and then I'll see if I'm going to do anything with it. And I ended up staying up throughout the whole night because the episodes are about 45 minutes, so there was 9 of them. So I think I ended up staying up all the way to like 6 or something. maybe even longer than that. And the point is, I ended up staying up the whole night because I just couldn't. They were so good. I had to keep watching the next episode, which is again not the experience that I had with season 2. I could have stopped watching season 2 at any point. I kept watching it because, one, I knew I was going to do a review on it, but I was honestly, I was really pulling for Arcane season. I really wanted it to be good, but it just wasn't. Unfortunately, so they did the same thing. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Let's see. 4 things. 30 seconds of screen time doesn't equate to 30 seconds in the world show. Vi save Jace. Embassy swooping in with her army was precisely the point. Lily not even going to watch the rest of it. Yeah, of course. Of course he's not going to watch the rest of the video. I assume he's talking about 30 seconds. What is this? Shoot. Okay. 30 seconds on screen time doesn't equate to 30 seconds in time. Okay. He's talking about the Vi running. How dare they play ads on my video? No. That's annoying that it played an ad. I changed that? Is my fault? Is that my fault? Why would it do that? Why would it play another ad even though I just paused it for a few seconds? That shouldn't do that. I need to look at that. What's YouTube doing? What are you doing, YouTube? He's talking about the 30-second thing. I already went through that. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. And Mbessa, I saw this several times too. Mbessa swooping in an army again. That doesn't. Yes, that played an important part of the, the whole thing of her orchestrating the thing. But that doesn't matter to the whole V. That has nothing to do with the V thing. That's its own separate thing. The whole point is you didn't need that. You could have just cut that part out and it would have stayed the same. It didn't do anything. And if you want to have Vi save Jace, you could have just had her save him in any other way that didn't involve breaking the rules of time and reality. Like she could have just punched the person and then saved Jace. She could have not, and then she could have, one of the troops from Mbessa could have done it. That doesn't. Again, this is someone not taking what I'm saying and focusing on a different part and being like, well, this part makes sense, so the other part's okay. These are two different parts. You gotta focus. I know it's real hard. I mean, even I sometimes, I'm saying on something and I'm like, oh, what's this over here? Like, oh, I get it. We're all, thanks to technology, a little scatterbrained. I get it. Me too. I get that. But we gotta focus. We gotta focus in. You gotta focus in on what I'm saying and what I'm talking about, and not things that don't pertain to what I'm talking about. We can do it. We can do it together. We can do it together if we try. Is this rage bait? Because you're literally the only one I hear saying anything bad about Arcane. Not surprising for the reasons I mentioned. Saying the character development is weaker is weird. Vi becomes an enforcer, blah, blah, blah. Kiss, again, I talked about how that was also weak writing. Becomes a dictator. Yeah, that was good. I said that was good. Again, didn't watch the video. I said that was good. Leaves her in the dirt, blah, blah, blah. Jinx wait, Jinx? God, I really wish they would. I mean, I know I'm bad. I'm also, I have dyslexia, so I misspell things all the time. And obviously I know not everyone's dyslexic, but maybe put it through like a word processing unit, or maybe, I mean, honestly, I feel like social media places should have spell checking. I think some do. I want to say, I know one of them does have spell check. I think all of them should have spell check at this. I mean, it's such an old feature. I feel like most things, because reading these comments sometimes is just the broken English and just misspelled words. It's really hard for me, again, as someone who suffers with a little bit of dyslexia, to read. I mean, if you ever watch my streams where I read, where I'm playing like horror games that are made, sometimes in different countries, and then sometimes there's just not a lot of effort put into them. Where a word is misspelled intentionally, like it's someone's journal and they're like using shorthand or whatever, and I like have like a brain problem or hiccup, because I'm like, is this word spelled wrong on purpose, or is my brain not seeing it right? And so when I read a lot of misspelled things, or broken English, it messes with my brain because I can't tell if, again, I'm like, is my brain doing the problem wrong, or is it? So sorry, it gets me. I have to reread things several times because my brain. Jinx is accepting who she has become. Okay, but that doesn't. Again, that wasn't my point. That wasn't anything I was talking about. My point was, yeah, Jinx has in the first season she accepted being Jinx, the insane person. You know, the insane person that is Jinx. She's accepted that. What I'm saying is, what I mentioned, as I said again here, is that the whole time they're saying all the other people, the extras and other people keep saying she's more insane than she's ever been. And then when they show Jinx, she is not. She's very calm and very, she's very rational, actually. It's almost weird. She's more sane than she was before. So again, like I mentioned, you're telling us to feel some way, but you're not showing us that. You're saying you should feel blah, but that's not what's happening. It's a bad writing thing. Victor becoming Jesus, I talked about that. Obviously, I didn't talk about it in the video because I had to cut it down. V is going full goth now. No, she's not. That's in the trailer. So this person's talking about things that didn't even happen yet. In the trailer, if you don't know, here, let me pull it up. In the trailer, they show, I assume in the next, and obviously in the next parts, Vi is like in a freaking, like, there she is. You saw a little bit. She's in like a battlefield and she's all super gothed out. None of that was in the 3 episodes. So this person's already talking about things that they don't know anything. No one knows anything about except for the writers. So again, that's not a critique. That's an emotional response. Again, I understand why for the reasons I said before. And what more character development in 3 episodes? Everyone has an opinion, but that's just a lie. No, again, as I mentioned, we can just easily go back to season 1, the first season. In the first 3 episodes, they introduced way more characters. At least I showed this in my video. The amount of characters, and I didn't even put them all here. Let me get through this ad. Yep. What the hell? Yep. I show this in my video, again, showing that they didn't watch the video. Pretty on par. Pretty on par for people who have emotional responses without actually. Where is it? Okay, I'm still talking about. Where am I talking? Oh, there we go. Okay, there's character. It's like a short little, like a 2-second thing, which was annoying because I had to get all the stupid faces. And that's why I didn't even put all the characters because I was annoyed and I was like, this is enough. Where am I?
Way.
There it is. So they couldn't do this. They developed all of these characters and more. I just didn't put them all because I didn't want to fit them all. In season 1, in the first 3 episodes, they went through all of these characters, giving us backstories on most of them, giving us what motivates them, giving us their names, and more in the first 3 episodes of the first season. But they couldn't do that for 4 or 5 characters in the second season. Again, yeah. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. We read that one. What I heard, Act 2 and 3 are back on season 1 level. Maybe before seeing the whole season is weaker. You should wait. Again, this is exactly what I addressed this in the video, and I addressed this here. Again, you didn't watch the video. And blah, blah, blah. Literally exists the fact that first season 2, where Vi literally solo a whole gang. Oh, we're talking about, this was a reference to, I mentioned, which I kind of touched on here, the plot armor thing, where, when there's the invasion, or not invasion, the gang, God, what's the word? Not ambush. they do a surprise attack on the memorial, and they're caught without their hex weapons in the slaughter. And I mentioned how like the only people that of course don't get slaughtered are like the new characters. And I was giving reference to that. They don't really give a very good, believable reason as to why they don't get killed, but of course we know the reason is because of plot armor. But I again give the caveat that all heroes have some sort of armor, and that wasn't a really big point. Obviously, that was like the weaker point of the 3 bigger points that I made, and so obviously that's the one they focused on, ignoring, of course, the other 2 bigger points. But yes, as I mentioned in the video, most characters have some sort of plot armor. It isn't great. Good writing would find a way around that. But again, like I said, it's very common, so we overlook it. But again, you chose to focus on the weakest of the 3 arguments and disregarded me even saying what you're saying exactly. So again, listening skills are part of our thing. Sound like a... Oh, this is the one that made me laugh. You sound like a Discord moderator. Meant as an insult. That's what made me laugh. It's meant like... like you didn't need to clarify. Sound like a Discord moderator. That's an insult, by the way. Like, we got it. Never have a opinion again. This is on par with, like, again, this is just a straight up emotional response. I usually get stuff like this, you know. At least they didn't have to. Well, I don't mind, you know, people needing to vent or whatever, you know, whatever reason. It doesn't, like I said, I can differentiate between an actual critique and, you know, an emotional response. And I like that. Like, the only ones I don't care for, what I will do something is, just because of, like, I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube or stuff, but like if there's like a death threat, and some people do that, I have to mark it, because I just don't want that to be used against me or whatever. Like, you didn't, you know what I mean? Like, if someone seriously ever one day does that, then, you know, somebody like, well, you didn't take these other ones serious. Why couldn't you take that? You know, so I have to do that. It's kind of a headache for me. So don't do that. It's annoying. And you get reported by YouTube, and you know, the YouTube is cracking down on that, so you should be careful what you say. Like, don't do that. It's just dumb. Don't get death threats. But I do get that pretty often, and it's annoying. I have to deal with that, but it's not annoying. I just, you know, go over here and I say report, blah blah blah, and then it disappears, and YouTube does whatever they want to do with it. But let's see. Anything else? Season 1 and so on is not nearly as strong. Season 2, episode 1 is not nearly as strong as season. Yeah. Think you're dismissing it way too early. Okay, we'll see why. Oh, this is the paragraph. Oh God. This is the paragraph. Not the paragraph. This is the fucking essay. We'll go through it. I thought, again, like I said, I was like, oh, maybe someone actually like put some thought into it, because they wrote so much, and I was like, no, let's go through it all. Again, the first thing to talk about is like, again, which all the other ones, because it's only the first part, doesn't matter. The first part, the third of it is bad. It will always be bad. Just because the second part and third part are good doesn't undo the badness of the first part. So you will always be operating at a lower quality, especially compared to the first season. All right. And season 1 works as perfectly as self-contained completed arc. It's not a self-contained completed arc. It literally ends in a cliffhanger. Expanding on that is going to be hard. It doesn't. It literally, it ends on a cliffhanger. It ends mid-action scene. It isn't a contained story at all. I'm sure some arcs are contained. Obviously, the characters that die, their arcs are over. But it's not a contained story by any means. So that's not true. Expanding on is going to be hard. Yes, that is true. High hopes for season 2, but it's good. Okay, they did give a lot of, like, you can tell that this person's like, they are also disappointed, but they're still championing. I don't think season 2 is going to will be all that bad. It is, though. We can see that it is. Again, if we were talking about the trailer and it hadn't come out yet, then yes, this statement could be true, but we know. I just laid out, I did a video that laid the reasons out, and then I just talked about it for over an hour, laying out all the reasons. It is bad. And it's not really weaker. It is weaker. Again, I just the same reasons I just applied. At any point, I agree with his music. I think the soundtrack, seemingly not following the 3 big emotional climax songs, doesn't bode 3 big emotional... That's not at all what I... Again, it's not what I'm talking about. Did you listen? Did you listen to what I said? No. As well as the fact that I don't even know what he's talking about. The 3 big emotions. That doesn't mean... That's nothing. That doesn't make any sense. There's what 3 big emotional songs? There were several songs throughout. The whole thing is... Just through season 1, there was tons of different songs. And again, my whole point was... And I was specifically talking about the music video parts. Because there's various soundtracks throughout, obviously. But I was talking about what I talked about earlier. What I spent like 30 minutes talking about earlier. I was talking about the parts where they're using it as a motivation, as a tool to convey information in a creative way. And as I mentioned, it doesn't work in this season as it did in the first. I think Vi running from the hammer was a little weird. Yeah, it was a little... You know, her having superhuman speed was a little weird. Was a little weird. Her having the same powers as the Flash was a little weird. For this one moment, was a little weird. I agree. Jace having it nearby would have made more sense. Agreed. Okay, so that I agree with. Yes, I think if you wanted to have that scene where she fumbles with the gun and they shoot it and she misses, and where the part where she saves Jace, I think it would have made... Again, you just fix the problem. You could easily fix the problem if the hammer was just backstage. Like, maybe Jace, was a little apprehensive about what happened. Maybe it would make sense. He's a little shell-shocked from being bombed. It would make sense. He wants to keep it close. Makes sense. And it isn't weird that she chose the hammer because her gauntlets are destroyed. He rebuilds them. That's part of the plot, is that she mentions it several times that her gauntlets are broken from when she fought Savika. Remember, she broke one for sure. I don't know. I'm pretty sure she didn't break the other one, but we can assume that maybe Jinx broke it. Or maybe Jinx... No, because she had the crystal. That's funny. I just realized... There's a... Maybe something with season 1. Again, a small detail. Why didn't... If Jinx... Because the whole thing was she had a crystal. One of the big plot points of this first season is Jinx steals one of the crystals. And she uses it to make the super weapon, which is the climax, which is the ending scene of the first season. And the whole reason the whole, story takes place. It's the one of the inciting incidents. Why she had access to Vi's gloves. And maybe one got destroyed and the crystal got destroyed, but one didn't. So that means she had access to a second crystal. Why didn't she steal the second crystal? Why didn't she just steal the gauntlets in general? Why did she leave them behind? Doesn't make sense. But again, that's very nitpicky. Again, you can easily dismiss that, or a reason for that would be, Jinx was accepting, being Jinx, and she was at her peak of not being in her right mind, so she could have just not cared, and whatever. I don't care about this super powerful thing. Like, I'm crazy. It doesn't matter to me. Only matters to me is what I'm doing. So again, not a big problem. But I didn't think about that. But yeah. So anyways, that's why she got the hammer. Is because her gauntlets were destroyed, and they mentioned that in this season. I think Vi being able to not be using it makes sense though. I think Vi not being able to use it makes sense though? Question mark? So you don't think that is, or you do? Why the question mark? She's not exactly flexible when it comes to weaponry and teamwork being required. Yeah, no, I didn't have a problem. Again, I never mentioned that her not being able to use the weapon was a problem. I actually think that was funny. I think that it does make sense, because why would she know how to use this weapon? She's no one's ever seen before. Only person who's used it before is Jace, because he designed it. So of course nobody would know how to use it. I mean, her gloves are pretty one-dimensional. You just punch. Okay, yeah. Blah blah blah. Okay. Being required is fine. The reason they missed was a combination of they missed, yes. Again, yes, that is true. They would have gotten it if she hadn't intervened. Okay. Why are you talking about no impact? It didn't have any impact. It accomplishes a few things. Vi is still very not flexible. That has nothing to do with Vi gaining super speed. Again, you're not addressing the issue. You're not addressing the issue that I have brought forth, because you can't make sense of it. Which is why I brought it forth. It doesn't make sense. It shouldn't have been there. It's an amateur mistake. Janice. 2. Jace and Piltover as a whole are still overconfident in experience. Established that even with heptex weapons, the Zonties still are a threat. Again, this has nothing to do with that scene. Establishes Ambessa's maneuverability? No, it doesn't. Again, they're doing what the other person did. They're saying, because again, Ambessa coming in, I didn't say Ambessa coming in, saving everyone at the last minute doesn't make sense or have impact. That does make sense. I said that. What doesn't make sense, again, let's focus, let's not be distracted. Let's focus on what I'm saying and the point I'm bringing up. The point is that the scene before that, the part where she has superhuman abilities to run faster than the Flash, doesn't make sense and didn't need to be in. You yourself solved the problem by putting you yourself, even in your own argument, say it would have made more sense for the Hammer to be backstage. Yes, because you recognize there's a problem, that it doesn't make sense, and your brain is fixing it. This is a good thing. But this is nothing to do with, again, they're saying this part of the scene makes sense, so it's okay that the rest of it doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Just because this part makes sense doesn't give the other parts a pass. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. Again, focus on the part that we're talking about. Logically, progression and reason for Piltover to escalate is not perfect. The hammer running thing, it's not perfect. The hammer running thing, but it is solid and accomplishes what it meant. No, it doesn't. This statement doesn't make sense. You just combined in the first two reasons and into number 4. You basically just said the same thing again. Okay. You fight nitpicks Justine for the lack of understanding of how it fight works. No, I pointed again. You're not pointing again. If you want to talk about the points that I addressed, talk about the points I addressed. All you're doing is saying, I think you're wrong. You have to give reasons, critical reasons that apply to what we're talking about. Fights are not a clash of ability, rather a clash of ideals. Okay, you're not talking about anything I addressed. You're talking about things that don't pertain to anything we're talking about. Yes, fights can have those things. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the laws of physics being broken in your scene. In the Savika fight, yes, Caitlyn should lose. Yes, she should. And she does just later when she tries. Again, that's not what we're talking about. Yes, she does when she gets confronted by Vi because she's going to shoot a child. Vi stops her from doing that. That has nothing to do with the fist fight before. These are two different things. I'm talking about the thing that doesn't make sense, which you agreed in your own statement. Again, I understand you like the IP. I like the IP. I like Arcane. I'm not gonna let things pass when they're doing things poorly. I understand your emotional response to it. I understand. And you're being pretty respectful, so I understand. But you're not addressing the issues I'm talking about. You're addressing different issues that work and being like, well, because this works, this is okay. No. We're talking about the fight between Caitlyn and Savika. That doesn't work. That doesn't make sense for all the reasons that I said. And you haven't addressed any of those reasons. You need Jinx to be the catalyst for splitting between Vi. Again, they're just going on. But just having a straight 2v1 makes the pressure a lot non-existent and a lot less believable. Not a huge fan of this fight, but I think it works fine. Savika has a new arm and Hector, but she doesn't use. She doesn't use her new arm. Again, as I pointed out earlier, she doesn't even use her new arm, which we had just seen in the previous episode that she used to destroy a pretty strong enemy. But she doesn't use it against Caitlyn for reasons? And she has no reason to hold back against Caitlyn. She has every reason to want to kill Caitlyn because she's an enforcer that she has no connection with whatsoever. So, again, you need to address the issues that I'm bringing up. I think the biggest two issues in Season 2 is going to have to be in cramming a lot of content into just not enough time. I don't think it's weak so much as it is being crammed. again, why do you think they need to cram a whole bunch of stuff into a small season? They didn't. That wasn't a problem in season 1. And I would argue, again, like I did, that in season 1, the pressure was far greater because everything was new and they had to prove themselves. In season 2, they've already proven themselves to be a trustworthy, show that has high quality. So they have every reason to take their time. And yet they decided to rush for no reason. Again, I understand what you're saying. It just doesn't make sense. And they have every reason to take their time. Why? What is this imaginary timeline that they have to cram a whole bunch of stuff into, a small little window? Why? No reason. Unless, of course, Netflix was forcing them to do, and then that wouldn't negate it not being bad. It's still bad, but then we could blame, Netflix and be like, Netflix did it. They were forcing them to do. Again, but it still doesn't change that it's currently bad in the state that it's in. Chew Guy is an enforcer already. I'm pretty much sure. Again, you're assuming. We don't know that. I get it. I too thought, because he's wearing blue, so I thought he's wearing a blue coat, so it's not an enforcer coat. I thought maybe it kind of, we don't know. We actually don't get a good look at it because once he joins the team, he's wearing his new armor. But it doesn't look like an enforcer coat. It's blue, kind of like an enforcer coat. But again, I assumed later on, like I mentioned, that was the storyline they were gonna go down. But that's never what you're saying is like you said, I'm pretty sure because you don't know because it's never addressed, which it should have been. I assume he'll get more backstory in Act 2. No. Again, like I said before, they introduced way more. They just introduced at least 4 or 5 times more characters within the first 3 episodes of season 1. Didn't have any of those problems. So why now is it a problem? Because you done messed up. That's why. I don't know, right now it seems rough with the new characters. Yeah, it is. See, they at least, there's a little bit here where they're fighting. They're trying really hard, but they're not. There's a little bit of acknowledgement there, which I appreciate. They acknowledge that, yes, they're just not really fully to let it go and say, like, yes, there is no. But I have faith in the writers that the issues will be releasing in batches as though we don't get the full binge experience. It doesn't matter. Like I said, if season 1 was released, it was released in sections, I would not have any of the same critiques I have for this one. Not at all. I probably wouldn't have any critiques in the first 3 episodes of season 1. At all. So, no. This is a severe drop in quality. You hoping, again, like I just keep saying, even if the next 2 seasons are even better, the next 2 parts are better than season 1, it doesn't change the badness in the first part. It will still be bad, and it will still weigh down the show overall. Sorry. There's no getting around. If it was 1 episode, it wouldn't be great, but we could lean into that excuse or that argument more. If it was 1 episode, we could lean into that more. But a third of the whole show. No. Can't. I think the biggest issue seems. Okay, I read that. I don't think that they have leaned a little away from the. I don't think that they have leaned a little away from the self-containedness of act. I don't know what you're saying here. Like we already addressed the first part. The first season was not a contained full story. It ends on a cliffhanger. Anyway, character development is a buzzword. No. Yeah, I remember this. No, character development is the accurate terminology for what I discussed. You using buzzword in this statement is actually a buzzword, which is pretty impressive that you used buzzword as a buzzword. No, character development is the appropriate term for what we're talking about, which is why the reason that I split it up into weak writing, character development, and bad pacing, I put that up there because those are the correct terms for what I'm talking about. So you know what I'm discussing, so it's not a rambling mess. much like the stream is. This stream is, but no, that is you just used a buzzword for buzzword. That's pretty cool, actually. I like that. Static characters are fine. Complaining about how characters are introduced rather than... Oh, that's right, he got cut off. He went so far, he got cut off. Or they, sorry, I don't know if it's he or she. They got cut off. I like Gengar. Gengar is also my favorite Pokemon. I don't know if it's yours, but I like your thing. I got cut off. No. Like I mentioned earlier, it would be fine if these characters weren't playing pivotal roles. That would be fine if they were just background characters, but then again, as my argument said, why not just make them gas mask guys? But you can't say that when these characters play pivotal roles in the storyline like this. This is a pivotal scene that changes the entire outcome of the story. This character intervening here plays a pivotal part in the story, is crucial to the story. You cannot have... And they're around for all 3 episodes. And sure, the parts they play in the other 3 episodes... I mean, they save Jinx several times, actually. You can say that they're small, sure. But this, you cannot deny how important this part is. And we don't know this character's name. Don't know. Don't know anything about him. Again, like I said, I don't even know if they could speak. Maybe they can't speak. Don't know. Nothing. Don't know nothing. And it's just, no, you can't say that. They can't be both important and unimportant at the same time. It's either one or the or. They can't be both. So no, again, as I mentioned multiple times, that doesn't work. Your argument doesn't work. You have some funny opinions, but that's not an opinion. This isn't what you just said is an opinion. I gave actual critiques, examples, points, arguments. You don't have a rebuttal, so you're going to saying your attempt is to devalue my valid arguments by calling them opinion, so that you don't have to address them. But that's not going to work. You need to address the things that I've said. Still going to finish the series. I agree with what is said here. If the next season is poor like this, then I will be finished with the property. Yeah. Again, all this guy does was complain, except for the first part where I literally spend the beginning of the video, the first minute, I talk about how great season 1 is, and then in the middle I talk about the good things about season 2, and then at the end I talk about the good things about... Oh god, another ad. I talk about the good things about season 1 again. So again, not a critique, an emotional response because they don't like what I said, or they don't have an argument for my argument, or the things that I brought up. Again, like I said, all this, I like to go through it as a healthy... It's good to go through this as a healthy exercise to be able to, again, differentiate between critique, feedback. That's the word I was looking for. Feedback. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. Fell from my brain. There's a difference between critique and feedback and opinion, and then lesser is even... Well, a couple of these, as we saw, were just straight up emotional response. Not even watching the video or listening or addressing anything that I said. But it's a good thing to go through and understanding and grind, especially if you're going to post stuff. It's a good skill to learn. Again, art class is one of the weird hidden gems of being an art major is having good critiquing skills, which I don't think is universal, because there's a lot of professional artists who, like, man, it's like they've never been critiqued in their life before. It's really weird. Maybe they might have pulled that part out of curriculum, especially nowadays, because it's very much, stand in front of the classroom and take your beating. So I would assume why in this very, a bit softer culture that they would get rid of that. But it's a shame if they did, because it's a very important skill to learn. But yeah, I think think that's gonna be it. I think I pretty much said everything that needed to be said about Arcane Season 2. Yeah, my overall thoughts is it's just barely okay. It's not good. I'm not gonna sit here and say it's like super bad, but it's barely okay-ish. Yeah, which is a bummer. It's a bummer. Again, I don't know if I'll probably watch the next parts, but it's not gonna be a priority. I believe the next part comes out in like a week or so, or I think it comes out this weekend. Oh yeah, it's weekend to weekend. So first part came out last weekend. This one comes out this weekend, and then I don't know. We'll see. There's a movie I want to watch coming out this weekend, and I have to go to a little bit. I can't go to my normal theater to see it. It's a Japanese movie. It's like Ghost Cat something, a zoo or something like that. I'm surprised it's not playing at the theater closest to me, but I'm gonna have to travel. Not that far. Travel like 20 minutes away. Yeah, I'm probably gonna. I am gonna go see that, and I'm gonna do a review on that because, again, for all the reasons I mentioned. But it is a shame. It is disappointment. Not the end of the world. They could always come back. Just because season 2 probably not gonna be that good. Isn't all that good. Doesn't mean if they get greenlit for season 3, doesn't mean season 3 can't be good like season 1. But to sit here and try to use excuses or try to distract the conversation away or try to belittle valid arguments to say that Arcane Season 2 does not have a significant decrease in quality is just clearly not being very intellectually honest, clearly. So yeah, bummer, but it is what it is. It is what it is. We still have season 1. Oh, that's season 1. I'm gonna be watching season 1 for a long time, so I think it's fine. All right. But yeah, as I said, I think that's gonna do it for me for today. I forgot. I think on Friday we may play a new game because I think we've run the course on. Once Human. I don't know why I can't say words today. Once Human. I think we run the course on that, but I meant to discuss it with Garrett. But maybe we'll see if we try a new game because I think we're done with Once Human. But should be good. Yeah. Next video, all stuff gonna be coming out. I don't foresee any big things that could get in the way of it. So I think it's gonna be all good in the neighborhood. But that's gonna do it for me for tonight. Thanks for everyone who popped in. Thanks for all you dirty lurkers in the back who didn't say anything. We love a good, dirty little lurker here. And if you'd like to hang out again, I stream every Monday, every Wednesday, every Friday, and randomly on the weekends. You can come here and check me out on my main streaming platform, that is YouTube, or you can watch me on Twitch or Kick, or wherever you feel is best. But if you're on YouTube, as I mentioned many times during this video, I put out a review of a movie or a TV show every week on Tuesdays, and I also release other gameplay video I started. We're releasing that regularly on Thursdays, so that basically every single day of the week I'm basically putting out a video on YouTube because I stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then I put out a video Tuesday and Thursday. And I put out a short every single weekday on top of working a full-time job. So pretty cool. So suffice to say, if you want more content, it's all on YouTube. Just go over there, have at it. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me for today, and I will see you someplace else.